and I still enjoy the tournament play very much. So still up to this day.
Alrighty, and so we're actually getting into this draft already, and it looks like it's completed. Joe, can you already toss that on stream? So we have some more people to introduce, but I want to get into this right off the bat here. Blue Melon, I know you've been kind of watching in the background on our drafts and constantly pinging me what I should draft and how I should do it. But what do you think here from Pika Bold now that you can see their completed draft?
I kind of like part of it, and then they've got some tanky stuff, but they are lacking links, which worries me because I think in these kind of 5v5 or small game things, links are a huge power. And I'll be interested to see what this bomber can actually do against what the blue team has.
All right, and then Hoodie, will you talk us through Valhalla Bound's draft?
Yeah, of course. I think Valhalla Bound started out really, really strong. A Vertex Navy issue Worm into Vexer was really good. Specifically, I noted down for myself that I think the Worm was a great counter pick here because the red side had already chosen Gila at that point, so taking Worm away takes away from the archetype, and it's also looked very good next to the Vertex Navy issue and the Vexer. What is a surprising thing to me, what they did is then they went ahead and went through the second set of bans and then picked the Megatron Navy issue. Without having any obvious reps behind it, into a bomber that was already picked on the other side, kind of taking away from what they were doing, which is the long-range drone and rail, what I presume is rail Brutix. So I'm a bit confused there, but maybe they have a way to make this work.
Fair.
I
And
think
then I'll go
I
for it.
think
Sorry.
what's going to be interesting on the red side here is they have two ships which are not really sure if they're going to rep or not. So the Praxis or the Dominix both can rep. They have a lot of high slots. You can throw some reps in there if you want. And also, like Hoodie said, they've kind of got a lot of these Galente ships which all do a very set kind of damage. And the red team may be able to tank for that and mitigate a lot of what's coming in. The blue team has gone very kind of focused and single damage type there.
I do want to ask you guys about kind of the way people draft. Usually we see, at least on the red side, you kind of have your core coming out in the first 3 picks here. But they've done something interesting. They have a Merlin and a Nemesis, which was the second and third pick. What do you think about getting these lower point ships out early and hiding your points later, Blue?
I think it can go both ways. It's if you're not 100% sure what the enemy is going to do, showing these kind of smaller ships where they don't really tell you too much about where your draft is going is quite strong. But at the same time, sometimes, especially I wouldn't say with the Nemesis and Merlin, but sometimes with the Decis, the command Decis and whatever, you do need to get them early, otherwise you get banned. But I think what red team was trying to do here was see what the blue team was going to do, so they just picked two ships that don't really show much, but are versatile and kind of can fit in anywhere, and then round out the draft for the last 2 picks.
I am a little bit worried of, okay, you see a British Navy and a Worm. A Worm does a very extraordinary job at killing frigates, and they picked 2 frigates into that. Like, Hoodie, is there something I'm missing there, or why would you pick 2 frigates after a Worm?
I think that they maybe had a set plan going into this, and that the Worm was an excellent counter pick. I mentioned that before, and it looks so good to me in next to the Gila, Merlin, Rexus, Dominix, because then it shows like a very drone-centric setup. So I think they wanted to use the 7-pointer there, and they had kind of calculated what they were going to go for in the later end, and then they made a split-second decision to go with an 8-pointer because they had that available. That's my thought on it. Anyways, it could be something different, but because I agree with you that it looks like an odd pick. British Navy issue and Worm are both excellent ships that to counter something like a bomber, and they hard picked a bomber into it. I think that was supposed to be the Worm.
Got it. Oh, so that makes sense. So instead of pivoting, they just kind of kept with their set plan and just used a substitute there.
I think if
Now-
that is the case, then the red team maybe made a mistake with showing the bomber that early, because things like Praxis and Dominix, they're pretty unique. They're not, from what I've seen, they're not particularly common ships, and also again don't show too much. So they could have switched that around if that was the case, but they got shoehorned into this bomber.
Now we do see on Valhalla Bound, British Navy, Vexer, Megatron Navy, Vexer Navy. There's a lot of Kin Therm coming out there. Do you think that was an oversight by Valhalla Bound, or do you think mixed with drones, that's not as big of a deal, Hoodie?
It kind of depends on whether Pika is actually going to be armor or shield tank. Because mainly, if you're going to be resistance stacking, then armor is very good at this because of the direct to armor hardener. But considering that there's actually bonus drone ships, like you mentioned, it might not be as big of a deal. Although then, obviously, they won't be able to use rep drones as efficiently if they're coming from the Megatron Navy issue and the Brutix, for example. Um, it is still a possibility, but it's a risky shot as well. I don't think you can go and sit here with 0 explosive at the M resist and feel comfortable.
And do you think these guys are actually going to armor tank here, or being all Galante hulls mostly? Is it just going to be hull tank, max EHP, and just kind of YOLO it and see what happens?
You mean Valhalla?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I mean, there could be reps here, right? Like, we don't have to. There's obviously no bonus logistic ships, but you're capable of putting reps on anything here. So it could be the Vexor Navy issue or the Vexor. Both slots, both ships have plenty of high slots available. If they're not going for reps, a Megatron Navy issue is one of the more top end ship choices when it comes to hull tank. So that could definitely be a viable play as well.
Right. And then blue, if we're going back to Pikabold here, if we are assuming that they had an archetype and kind of a set plan going in, what do these bands? Why did they pick Golem, Armageddon, Hyperion? What read do you get from those?
I think they're worried about things. So obviously a lot of tank from the Hyperion and the Golem here. Golem a lot of projected damage, and I think from especially in a 5v5 setting, it opens up a lot of options because it can be reps. You can have reps and damage from a single platform. The Geddon, very, very strong newts, very long range newts, which is good in kind of these smaller arenas. And if you look at their cores, if they are having any kind of repping from remote reps from the Praxis or the Dominics, the Armageddon would be a real problem. The Balgorn was obviously already gone as well. And the Hyperion is just mega tanky, high damage in your face. And I can understand that some teams, when you only have 5 ships, don't necessarily want to be shooting a Hyperion for a long period of time. And if we look at what the red team have brought, really their damage is a Nemesis, a Gila, and either the Praxis or the Dominics, I think. I don't think both of these are going to be damage platforms. So they haven't got the highest damage in the world. So getting rid of these kind of mega tanky ships is not a bad shout.
All right, and then Hoodie, a similar question. We see Balgorn, Bargus, SNI. Are these just, these are strong, we want these out of the way, or is there a set plan, do you think, behind those?
It's always hard to guess that when you've seen a draft completely. The Balgorn, if they had a plan to go Megatron Navy issue from the get-go, then obviously the Balgorn makes a lot of sense to want to get out of the way. Those newts are super powerful and will definitely shut the Megatron down, especially if it's hull tank because it reduces the amount of capacitor boosters it can carry. And the Bargus and Scorp Navy issues are just two very, very strong choices against something like a Brutix. So it does seem like that they maybe had a plan to go for something, a setup that they ended up with, and in that case, the early bans make a lot of sense.
All right. And if we look at the Twitch stream, the vote is actually dead tied, 6 versus 6. So again, Blue, I'm going to say you're captain of the Pikabold team. You land on grid. What's your game plan here if you see Valhalla Bounce comp across from you?
That's a good question. I think what I want to do is I want to kind of keep damage off my Nemesis as long as I can. So I'd either use my Merlin to tackle the worm if possible, or the Mega Navy issue. And there's kind of two ways that I think Pikabold can go here. They can either try and keep their stuff alive and chip away at one of the bigger ships, or they can just kind of all in with the one ship with what damage they have. And if I was captain here, what I would say is, right, they got a BN9, they got a Vexor, they got a Vexor Navy issue. Brutix Navy is pretty tanky, but the Vexor Navy not so much. Let's just try and get rid of all of these with all our damage. And once they're gone, if we can keep the Mega Navy in place long enough with the Merlin to avoid most of their damage, then we should have this match.
All right, and Hoodie, similar question. You're captain of Valhalla Bound. You land on grid. You see Pika across from you. What's your game plan?
It's relatively hard looking at the Valhalla bound setup, and that's mainly because of the inclusion of the drone ships here. there's a lot of ways they could go. They could go blasters on everything here, including maybe even the Vexor and VNI. Of course, the Brutix Navy issue and the Megatron Navy, which means they're coming in with an absolute crap ton of damage that is going to be able to perhaps hit through this Praxis and Dominix under no links in a relatively speedy manner. But they could also be fitted with tracking disruptors. They could be jams. They could be dams. And in that case, they might want to play at range, damping out the Praxis and the Dominix and killing the Gila, the Merlin, and the Nemesis, for example. Which they can also easily do because the small drones, or the light drones from the Worm, the Vexor, and the Vexor Navy issue will make short work of those frigates. So it's very hard to say because I simply don't know at this point what their game plan could be based on their fittings. But they have a lot of options available to them. Let's put it that way.
Now,
I think
noticed...
if I was the
Go for it.
if I was the red team captain and I looked at the land on grid and I saw what blue team had, I would pray to every god in the sun that they are not a whole tank rush team, because I think if they are a whole tank rush team, I would be struggling to decide what to do here.
No, the Vexor Navy can't boosh, but the Megathron Navy and the Brutix Navy could MJD, just hull tank rush with MJDs into the backline. At least Hoodie, Blue, and myself have seen that work to great effect in the AT, bushing the backlines and killing it. Do you think that's an option here, or do you think it's just MWD straight in their face if they decide to go do a rush?
I think it exists. These ships don't necessarily need the mid slots for anything else. The Megatron Navy and the Brutix Navy issue, and the other three ships are pretty quick to begin with, and they're drone ships, which means they can project across the field. So it's definitely a possibility. They don't need to go for it. I think warping in at 0 is also fine. There's not a particularly high amount of screening available from the red team. There's the Merlin, obviously, which is pretty good at this job, but there's no links backing the Merlin up, and presumably there's no reps backing the Merlin up either. So I think they can also just rush right through it. But again, it completely depends on what kind of setup they're going for.
Fair.
I think
And then
I think the safer choice is MWD and go, because you can group up and just kind of and go in. The MJD is kind of the flex play. I think like I'm gonna flex on these guys. Let's MJD it.
what do you think, Logi Dami or Newt Dami here, Blue?
I think if I was red team, I'd have my reps on the Praxis and my newts on the Dominics. That's how I would go. Because I can kind of go forward with the Dommy. The Dommy can provide a screen almost for my Praxis with a lot of newts with damage from my my drones or sentries, depending on how they want to go. And the Praxis has a lot of high slots, a lot of mid slots, and a lot of low slots to kind of get what you need from a Logi ship. So that's how I would go.
All right, there's about 2 minutes left. Oh, I do want to ask Hoodie, quick question. Megathron Navy, if it has 3200s on there, can a Newt Dom or Praxis actually pressure enough to turn off its DPS, or are 3200s just too strong with Tech 2 Newts only?
I can't necessarily say whether they're too strong. Again, it really depends on the fit. There's a lot of things you could do to make yourself nearly immune to mutant newting. If you have 3200s and you're slapping on cap batteries at the same time, I'm pretty sure, I haven't done the test, but I'm pretty sure you could make yourself invulnerable long enough to newting. I think we've actually seen it in some of the opens as well. I think we saw a Balgorn pick, and into that was picked a rock, which then proceeded to destroy the Balgorn. And I think there were a lot of Cap Booster 3200s used in that particular fight. So apparently it is possible. And if they're fearing newts, I think it's definitely something they can do here. It kind of depends on... I think we're going to see a lot of... or we get to see a lot out of this team depending on the range they warp in. Again, so many different things that they can do. They're warping into 50 or they're warping into 0. They have this completely different fits and a completely different game plan.
Fair. And then quickly, I'm just going to take us off subject. Geronix had added a new feature for our Twitch viewers. Jero, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I can do. So one of the common themes you'll see when we do these streams, opens, and the league matches and broadcasts and all that jazz that we do is we throw shade at each other. So the channel points that you accrue from watching us, following, subbing, doing all that jazz, you can redeem, yes, I'm a retard, and yeah, there you go, I'll throw shade at myself. So you can redeem these points. We're going to set a limit on how many you can redeem per stream. But you redeem one of them, and either one of the casters, analysts, or anybody will throw some shade at myself or Casper, and we might add in some more as we go. So yeah, definitely give that a look. And if you're wondering where that is, it's below the chat, and there's a button that says Kill Marks. Click that, and you can see all the things you can redeem in there. And I do believe actually, Casper, you're owed a few. But right
What
now,
for what? What are you talking
I
about?
think you're owed a few. I think Wingnut redeemed some shade to be thrown at you. I think Mystical did. So chat, if you want to throw some shade at Casper, or if any of the analysts or casters want to, feel free. Just let loose.
Oh no. All right. Well, it looks like the teams are about to come down. So before we toss it over to our casters, Blue Melon, if you had to pick a side here, what side are you riding with?
I think Valhalla got this one.
All right, Valhalla and Hoodie.
It's really tough to call for me, and just to balance it out, I think I'm going to go for Pika Bolt.
Fair enough. And then I will introduce our casters for today. The first two matches will be done by Ithaca, Hawk, and Mizier. Ithaca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Ithaca Hawk. I'm casting this match today. I fly with Volta on TQ, and I've done a bunch of tournament stuff over the last couple of years, including AT as host.
And then Mizier.
Yeah, hello, I'm Michelle. I fly currently with Trigger Happy, but I have history with Camel and Hydras and been on their AT teams, so I have tournament history from there.
Oh, I do want to ask you guys a quick question. Have you done the opens, Ithaca?
Yes, I've done some of the opens.
So tell me as a new player coming in, what did you expect, and was it what you expected? And just tell me a little bit about the process of how you joined and a little bit of how you could get involved.
So the first time I joined, I literally just hopped on TS, and pretty much as soon as I did, I was picked into a team. I hadn't even booted up the game at this point yet. I was literally just logging in, and I was, joined a team with a bunch of people. We did a draft, we fit some ships, and we went out and had some fun. And then the next match I sat out, and then I got drafted again and played again. It was super easy. It was super chill. People were just sort of shooting the shit on TS. All you have to do to get involved is click the links below the stream to join Discord and TS. For the opens, you can pretty much just come along, and you're pretty much guaranteed to be in a team. It doesn't matter if you've got no experience, if you've got loads of experience. I mean, Casper's got some experience, and even he gets picked. So
Hey, shade.
Yeah, I paid for it, so that means I get to give it myself if I want
All
to.
right, fair. And then Mizier, have you done much of the opens also?
No, unfortunately not. Yeah, I've been really busy with real life. I have some exams going on, but I am hoping that next week I will get to fly them because it looks super fun, and I want to. It's been so long since I last flew in a tournament, so definitely something I'm looking forward to, and I'll go and kick some ass and show Casper how it's done.
Wow, so much shade being thrown at me. Ithaca, you mentioned you did have some AT experience. Remind me again who you did that with?
So I flew my first Alliance tournament, I think it was 8012 with the Bastards. And then I flew with the Volta team for 2 years until AT was no more. But my main sort of, I guess, experience with AT the last couple of years has been casting it as host and commentator for a couple of them, like 3 of them, I think.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite match that you A, played in and then B, casted that you remember?
The first ever match I played in, which was in like AT 12 or 13, and it was one of those bomber tinkers, and it went to the reverse tie-dye, and it was just complete madness because we didn't know what we were doing. So I'll always remember that because I was playing in a hotel lobby in Australia at like 2 a.m. on a laptop on 3G internet, and a wedding party came out of the hall during the match.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so it was an experience.
Dang. And then casting, do you have a favorite one that you got to cast?
Oh, so many. Like, all the experiences in the studio were just phenomenal. Like, just being with the team, and like, there was one, I think my favorite one I remember being part of was when Goons were flying and they had the Metanion field in the AUG Navy, and we were all standing out the studio watching it, and we were like trying to decide if it's a bait one, like is it going to be max tank because everyone's going to shoot the Metani, or is it going to be like DPS? And it ended up being a polarized one, and we were watching that happening, and it was just incredible. It was so much fun.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I did just get a ping that we are good to go, so I'm going to shut my face and toss this over to Ithaca and Mizier. Please take us away for the first match of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle, and with me is Etika Hawk. The first match of today with Pika Bold in red and Valhalla Bound in blue. So, Etika, can you tell me about the teams and the warpins?
Yeah, so the red team here, which is Pika Bold, have warped in all at 50, which does make sense based on what they've got. I'm really interested to see what happens with this Praxis. In fact, I'm going to look at it now and see if it has guns on it. And it does look like it does not have guns. So that is probably going to be some sort of RR Praxis, which is an interesting move. It does look like it's flying backwards, but that's just how the Praxis looks. Meanwhile, the Valhalla Baron team, they've warped in mostly at 40, apart from Peter Moonlight at 30, and then that Mega Navy right at 10. So I can only assume that he's going to rush in, which will be very interesting. But the countdown is coming very soon.
So I actually think that the Praxis has launchers, so maybe it's the Dominic's having the remote repair on.
Let me zoom in further. Oh yes, it does appear that you are right. The Praxis is a bit of a mess of a model sometimes. It's hard to tell. So we're waiting for the countdown, which is just being reset, I think. And what do you expect to see? I expect this Mega Navy is going to try and brawl in to the red team based on his warp in.
Yeah, it definitely looks like they're going to crawl in, and it may be the best option for tactics. And we see the countdown is going down now, and the match has begun.
Yeah, so immediately the red team turning and burning away. They really need to keep that bomber alive as long as possible because it will do a lot of damage to the other team. But it is very vulnerable, as mentioned by our analysts earlier on, to the drone swarm coming in from the blue team. Right now,
And we can see the Megatron doing exactly the opposite as we expected to. It's burning away.
yeah, it was a bait warp in perhaps. The Vexor in the blue team is taking most damage right now as he goes into half armor already. So it is possible this is some sort of hull tank thing, but if it's a rush, they're not doing it very well.
I definitely hope it's a hull tank for the team, because otherwise losing a ship so early is going to be bad for them.
Yeah, no damage applied at all to the red team yet. I don't even see drones moving across. They're just sort of sitting following the blue team around. Like the Vexor has got his Valkyries following him. Not very much going on.
So it looks like the dummy has thrown down some curators. And we also see the Praxis throwing down curators. So they have sentries out and they are shooting at the Valhalla bound team.
Yeah, that Mega Navy is now starting to go after the Gila of the red team, but no damage applied from the blue team right now. Zero damage whatsoever. Meanwhile, all of the blue team are taking pretty chunky damages. Vexor Navy is almost into out of armor. The Vexor itself repped back up. Right now, it's the Mega Navy that's taking some damage. Don't really see what the blue team are accomplishing here.
And now they really have to do make a play soon, because they'll soon run out of EHP, and then there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, there's only so long you can kind of keep repping yourself and not doing anything to the other team and still hope to win. Like I haven't seen one single damage or damage be applied to the red team as of yet, and we have now Vexor Navy into hull and a Brutix Navy half through armor of the blue team.
Yeah, it looks like the blue team do have some self-repair, but they can't keep that up forever, and like, even with reps, they're still bleeding hull.
Yeah, the worm has finally got his drones onto that Nemesis now, as we see those two bonus hobgoblins just making short work. He pressed F on that Nemesis and he was deleted, but they have lost that Merlin right there. That just went down. The Nemesis, though, as I say, is surviving.
It's the worm going down by the sentries.
Yes, sorry, you're
And
right.
we just saw a ship warp out.
Oh, I wonder if we had a DC. Interesting. So now it is a Vexor Navy in hull, who's still surviving. Not much damage being applied, but they really need to do something else, this blue team. They're working on the Merlin, but I mean, they've only killed the bomber, which isn't exactly great. This has not gone well for them.
The Vexor looks like they have disconnected, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, although I'm not 100% convinced it would have made much of a difference based on what we've seen so far, because when it worked out, they hadn't really accomplished very much. The Vexor Navy goes down. The Merlin is surviving with about a third shield at the minute. He's just sort of burning away. He's got a swarm of acolytes chasing him down, but they just don't seem to be able to keep up with him very well as he's micro driving around the arena.
Yeah, the Vexor came back again, but he has been disqualified, so he cannot fight anymore in this fight.
Yeah, so the Vexor has landed back on grid, has it? No, he's worked off again.
Yeah, so the blue team only has the Megaphone Navy issue and the Blue Team's Navy issue, while it's still up against 2 battleships and a healer and a Merlin.
Yeah, I'd say this match is pretty much over for the blue team. I don't really know what they could have done differently. Like at the start, I expected to see them chasing down, but they didn't. They sort of retreated away, and I think that just wasn't the right move for them in this case. There was just so long, like at least 2 minutes, with no damage being applied at all to the red team. Meanwhile, the blue team were just eating DPS across the board and having to deal with that.
Yeah, the Merlin had the Megaphone pinned down, but he got low, so he broke off again, and the Megaphone is free.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to last much longer though, as he goes into Hull, getting chunked from something probably rails coming from British Navy and Mega Navy there. 2 Navy ships just doing the work, and as I say that, he's still alive. Oh, he's just living to win.
He's
4%
in a
structure.
sliver of structure, but as soon as these drones,
No,
yeah, there he
is.
goes.
Yeah, he did his best there, but it wasn't to be. The Mega Navy is about just over half hull. I mean, I guess if they kite around and do some significant damage, then they might be able to win on points, perhaps, but I don't think so.
They need to kill one of the battleships on the red team in order to win, but they have the blue team has the Megaphone already in half structure, so it's not going to live for that long. But the Praxis is taking heavy damage, already half shield.
Did we see that Mega Navy rep armor at all earlier? I'm just wondering if he's maybe reloading an Ansel armor repairer right now. I
think
recall
was
seeing
doing
it.
Earlier.
Okay, so it'll be interesting if he is and he does get it off. It becomes a kiting game. He's still bleeding hull. To be honest, if they can kill the drones maybe that are following him, then they might stand a chance. Oh no, I say that, but it's the Praxis that is probably hitting it from right there. The Praxis is actually neuting the Mega Navy, who's right behind them, trying to do his damage. Do you know, they're not applying much damage to that Mega Navy based on what I'm seeing. If that Mega Navy can keep his cap up, he might be able to finish off that Praxis.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a DPS race, and the Megaphone is actually tanking quite well against these drone ships. So maybe out of in the deep fall off of the sentry drones, it's like only 2 Predators on it as mobile drones, so there's not that much DPS on the Megaphone.
Yeah, and as we said, the Praxis is now out of shield and dropping fast through armor. The Mega Navy is just over 20% hull left, and I think he's still shooting. Yeah, he is still shooting. So the newts from the Praxis haven't shut him down yet, so he probably has a cap booster of some description, but he's definitely going to be struggling for cap. This is going to be super tight. Like, if he can kill that Praxis, they're in a good, well, I say good, they're in an okay position, better than we thought a few minutes ago.
Yeah, and the Brutish Navy has been chasing the healer, but I think it's switched back to the Praxis.
Yeah, he needs to help his Mega Navy buddy finish this Praxis off, otherwise they don't have a hope in hell. But I don't think they're going to do it now, looking at the structure. He's on 6%, and that Praxis is not even into hull yet. 3% structure left for that Mega Navy. 1%, there he goes, he's down.
And that goes...
So perhaps this British Navy can finish off the Praxis. I mean, he probably should be able to. He's got about 3 minutes, and Praxis doesn't seem to rep.
Even if he finish off the Praxis, he still have to fight a Dominix and a healer, so...
Yeah,
this is
it's not
really
going to go well for
uphill
him.
battle for him. They needed that Megaphone Navy, and it's no longer there.
Yeah, but at least he can claw back some pride if he can finish off this Praxis. Peterman like there, just soloing that ugly battleship, repping a little bit of his armor, but he's not hull tanked. He's gone down pretty quick actually through hull. It's going to be close, but I think he can do it.
So it does make me wonder if that Vexor didn't disconnect, if they had enough DPS to push it here, but...
Yeah, when that happened, I'd pretty much written off the blue team, but they had some really good flying there from the remaining pilots to get to the position that they're in now. to be honest. I didn't expect it from them. So you're right. If that Vexer hadn't disconnected, then perhaps this would have been a very different match right now.
And as we are talking, the Brutix Navy just went down, making it a victory for Pika Bolt in red. And let's send it back to the analyst desk for their insight on this match.